Hello and a very warm welcome. This is the first of the second series held by the European Jazz Network, a series of webinars since COVID began. Now, the first series very much focused on the impact that COVID was having, what would happen, how would we all be? And the second series looks at a broader picture. And perhaps as we get towards the end of this most extraordinary of years, there'll be a glimmer of hope. Will our challenges have turned to opportunities? So I hope that you'll be able to be with us for all 6 webinars. Well, today we are looking at a webinar called My Way. Why are there so few women in jazz journalism? How can this be improved? What are the causes of this? And what effect does this have on music journalism? I'm Fiona Talkington, a UK-based broadcaster, radio presenter, writer and curator, and I'm delighted to be joined today by, from Austria, Andreas Felber, who works for Austrian radio. He's travelled extensively and is across all music genres. From France, Yven, who's a music journalist for some 13 years, and she's on the board of Citizen Jazz. From Poland, Mery, a radio journalist and presents for Radio Jazz FM. And from Switzerland, Sarah Chaksad, who's a musician, a sax player, also a band leader and director. And I'm delighted to welcome you all here today to discuss these topics that I think are so ripe for all of us. I know from my personal experience, one situation that really stands out was being on a panel during a conference, and I was the only woman, and I couldn't help but call this out and draw attention to the fact. And I'm reminded by of the reaction by one panel member who said, the issue of gender balance doesn't affect me because I only write about music. So I'll just let that sink in for a moment. But before we start into all our discussions this afternoon, let me introduce our panel to say where they're calling from, a little bit about themselves. So Andreas, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Fiona. Good afternoon, everybody. Yes, I'm calling from Vienna. I'm working for Austrian National Broadcasting Corporation, Radio EJN, which is the channel where jazz is featured mostly. I'm responsible for jazz, pop, and world music especially. Before that, I was working as a freelance journalist for many years. Now, since 5 years, I'm focusing on that.
Thanks, Andreas, and good afternoon to Mery.
Hello to everyone. I'm Mery, music journalist from Poland, based in Krakow. I've been writing about jazz and improvised music, I think, for 8 or 9 years now, and also I've been working on the radio for 3 years now, I think. So I have like 2 jobs. And yeah, now I'm in my radio office. I'm here almost every day. So I think in this crazy pandemic time, I'm really, really lucky.
Thanks, Mery. Sarah, hello.
Hello, everybody. I'm saxophone player and composer, and I run my own jazz orchestra now since 8 years. And I'm working at the Music University in Basel at the Jazzcampus, where I'm co-leading a program. It's called Focus Year, with students from all over the world. And I'm also leading the club. It's the Jazzcampus Club. It's the club in the university where we present students, sometimes also international stars on stage.
Thank you. And Anne, welcome.
Hi everyone. So my name is Anne, and I'm here on behalf of the website Citizen Jazz, which is a French website, but I'm currently living in Norway, where I moved a few months ago. So I started to work here this summer, but I had 10 years or so experience. I have been a writer especially in the music press and web for more than 10 years, and more particularly in jazz, because like Sarah and so many others, you cannot really live as just being a journalist or a writer or a copywriter. So I've been also working in festival and concerts of jazz on the production side for about 10 years.
Thank you. You brought up an interesting point there, Anne, and I think one that's applicable to so many people about, so what is a jazz journalist these days? Years ago, people might have had jobs writing for papers, reviews, magazine, but today with online possibilities, social media, things have really, really broadened out. And can we earn a living? Do we earn a living? Or do we have portfolio careers? I know that that's something that we really will be looking at as well. Who are we? What are jazz journalists? So do we need them as well? Perhaps, Sarah, I'll come to you first. As a performer, what do you expect? What do you hope for from a jazz journalist? And what's your perception of what this term is?
Yeah, first of all, we really need them. We really need good people who write about art and make them visible. So what I expect that they write about the music, about the art we do. And of course, since we are talking about female journalists in jazz, also I hope that there will also be more women who write about our art, which is actually not a lot happening right now. I expect that women and men write about us and not only men.
Thank you. I was reading an interview with Frances Morgan, a UK-based writer and researcher, and she was saying that there's not so much that there aren't women who are writing, reviewing, writing articles and critiques, but it's the perception of women, and perhaps they become invisible. Anne, what's your view on the importance of having jazz journalists and women jazz journalists in the jazz world today?
Well, the more the merrier. It's just a question of differences of view. It's true that I've been thinking a little bit more these days, thinking about this webinar, about the fact that is there a different perception whether you work on a concert, on music? Is there really a difference of variety of styles, variety of the word or the adjectives you're using, whether you are a man or a woman? Not really, but it's a fact, and it's obvious for everyone that being a journalist is being part of being a woman journalist is being part of a minority, and working on the jazz world is also being part of a minority. So altogether, you really have to know that you represent a very narrow rate of journalism, and you have a big responsibility as well. So yeah, I regret, and I've been asking a few people around me, why is there so little representation for women? The problem is this is a majority. This is a man-oriented business and economy, and it has been for a long time. So it takes time to change, but I don't think there is a lot of difference in the way we should look at this music, whether you are a man or a woman. I just wish that, yeah, multiplicity of opinions exist and coexist. And there are tools to do this, and there are tools that have been enforced in many different cultures to help this move onward.
Thank you. We'll come back to some of those points a little bit later on. Mery, what's the situation in Poland, and how have you found it with your experience of being a woman journalist in what's sometimes perceived as a man's world?
Well, I can describe the situation in the case of some article. It was really important thing this year. Asia Pietrkolan, who is like editorial secretary and second person after head Paweł Brodowski, who deal with Jazz Forum magazine. She did a big research about women in jazz, but not artists, but women who work in jazz industry, almost always behind the big artist. And thanks to her, a big article was created in Jazz Forum this year in June, and we can find there information about 11 women called like Jazz Angel and other 43 women working in jazz industry as a managers, educators, producer, head of a concert agency, and also journalists. And among them, it's like 54 women are only 4 journalists. Like journalists working as a full-time journalist, because there is some few other women who work who do this job, but just from time to time. Sorry, so just 4 women jazz journalists. It's really like just a few women in this. Quite big in Poland industry, I think.
Thank you, Mery.
So,
and we'll come back to a lot of these very important points. And Andreas, why do we need this seminar? Why do we need to raise these topics today?
Yeah, because it's an obvious phenomenon. When I was asked to take part in this webinar, something in me immediately responded to the topic. Why are there so few women or female journalists in jazz? Because that's exactly what I perceived during the last decades, I would say. I was a freelance journalist for many years, working for printed media, and most of my colleagues were male. There were very few women, unluckily. Now, since 5 years, I'm responsible for the jazz department, jazz pop world music department at public radio in Austria, and in the cultural channel EJN. And it's interesting, there's also a male majority concerning my colleagues. And I would say once a month, somebody shows up or somebody contacts me, a young person, who applies or who wants to work with us, who wants to say, I would like to do jazz shows on the radio, whatever, I would like to work on the radio too. I would say 90% of these persons are male. There are very few women. And for me, it was just interesting to behind that and to ask, why is this the case? So I'm interested to recruit more women for our team, because we have already a majority, and for me it's an important question how to do that during the next years.
Thank you. We've certainly seen in recent years a much stronger lineup of women on stage, women performers, publicists, and the balance has certainly improved. But is there something about the jazz world? Is there something that's a little bit alien to being part of it? You know, if you're at a festival, if you're reviewing a concert, is there a world that we need to be part of that historically has frozen women out? Anne, what do you think about that?
Again, it's hard to say it's been done on purpose, or that men want to keep the power in this area or this specific genre of music. I don't think so. I really do absolutely think the contrary, to be honest, because I'm it has changed, of course. If you look at how jazz was depicted in the 60s or in the 70s, women had even less room or voice. So now my colleagues, or I would say the people in their 40s, men included, are part of the solution, because we all observe the same situation and we all want to change it. So I think words are important too. And I think there is, just as much as the world is changing, the economy is changing, the forms of the medias are also less and less patriarchal in the way they are published, the way they are written. The vocabulary changes. And there's a lot of studies that have been focusing on this point, but we as women have to be extremely picky on the word we choose when we write. And it's funny because this issue is coming and going in the media. It's not only jazz which is concerned, although jazz is a big symbol of this fight. But just the fact of mentioning female workers or female journalists, that's not good to me. It's a biological element. It's not a genre first. It's something you use, but for animals, not for human beings. So I'm into revendication of choosing the right word for the right situation, and be careful. All of us, men, women, journalists when they begin, journalists when they are I don't know, old enough to take part of this change. We need to be careful, and we need to just see things as something that is changing for the best. Do not use words that are nostalgic, or there's no use to be negative of this, because the figures are showing that everything is getting better and better a little bit each year.
Thank you. Andreas, as this shift has happened, where we've had newspapers and journals, and now the opportunities are so much wider. You know, we can all set up something that's our blog. We can all put our views somewhere on the internet. Should that not have made us more aware that there are many more really talented, engaged women than we perceive that there are? That, you know, this perception means that we're having this discussion today, but should we have seen far more than we realise now that we have wider opportunities?
Should we have seen far more than we realize? I think what I perceive is there are more women in music journalism, also in jazz, than some years ago. So it's increasing, but very slow. By far not as fast as it's increasing concerning musicians. And I think one important part for us men is, and some important thing that I realized some time ago, it's not enough to wait for women to show up and to ask, can we also work for this newspaper, can we work for this magazine, can we work for the radio? It's important to actively recruit them, because many women that I spoke to about that, they never thought of working as journalists. They might have been interested, but they never thought that it could be possible for them to work for a magazine, for radio, until that point that somebody offered them to do that. And this is maybe due to lack of role models. There are some exceptions, of course. In Germany, some of the most important magazines, Jazztätig, Jazzpodium, they were run by women for many years, but these are still exceptions. And if there are more role models, then I think it's a natural development for women to think of that option for their professional life. So I hope it makes sense.
Yes, absolutely. Mery, do you think the roles of being a radio broadcaster and a writer allow you to do things that perhaps we wouldn't have the possibility to do on the written word? For example, if you're doing a radio interview, there's an engagement with a musician that maybe doesn't always come across quite so well on the written word. You know, you look back, say, to the writings of Val Wilmer all those years ago and her fantastic interviews. But what can we do on the radio that perhaps is less possible in written word?
I think, I mean, in the radio, it's completely different contact, and I have a possibility to meet much more people that during the interview that I'm preparing for the magazines or some websites. So this is for me, this is the most important. And actually, I'm working in the jazz radio, so it's not like I have a 10 or 15 minutes to do some, short interview. But usually I have like 1 hour, 1.5 hours to talk with one artist. So it's an opportunity to, reach a lot of topics. Actually, the same like during the conversation, during the interview that I will after our meeting write to the paper. So for me, actually, it's quite the same, I think. Radio gives me the possibility to meet more people, for sure.
Do you think, Mery, that radio gives you the personality that can carry an interview through, and the way that written word, written features?
Yeah, for sure. Especially in social media, because a lot of our guests are, for example, doing a selfie or doing photos during our meeting and put it on the social media. Also, our radio have a fan page on Facebook, on Instagram. We put there a lot of pictures, so our face are recognizable in Poland. When I was working just for a newspaper, it wasn't like that. I was for example, during the festivals, during the concert, I was like nobody for people there. Nobody knows me, who I am, what I looks like. So this is really important also.
Sarah, I know that musicians love to have a good review in a magazine or online, in print. Festivals love this too, because they can immediately put something up online, the next day. Having words that are in print are something that you can use. It becomes part of your CV. Radio broadcasts happen. And although most of us have catch up and you can listen again, you can't quite as easily pin them down and put them into your portfolio of reviews. What's the most important thing that can happen for you as a musician? What do you love to see? What helps you in your career and broadens out your perception of the jazz world?
It helps a lot when it's, as I said before, when it's written about what we're doing, about the music, about the art, about the soloists on the recording, and all these things. And I mean, it changed really a lot in the last few years, even between my first album and second, between 16 and 19, that a lot of journalists, actually all male, I would say almost in every review there was a comment about my gender, especially actually in titles. So it was very often a title like Sarah Chaksad and the Boys, or the Power Woman and her band, or something like that. And a title like that I couldn't find 2019. So this is a very good development, and I think when we can go in this direction, it helps really a lot, and it helps everybody, because when I want to use a quote, then I need a quote about my art.
Thank you. A couple of comments coming in. Thanks very much. Of course, if you want to take part in the webinar, please feel free to use the chat. We'd love to hear from you. And about the nature of people who become jazz journalists are enthusiasts, people who go to concerts and they want to become part of it, and perhaps that's how we all began, is, you know, we love this, we want to do it, and it doesn't apply only to music. But I was referring back to the interview with Frances Morgan, again, that she did in 2017, who's saying that jazz can often throw up quite a lot of jazz nerds, obsessives, who know a lot, who can do the whole genealogy, the whole technical rider thing, and they're seen as authorities. If women have the same knowledge, they're seen as fans. And that can still be a little bit of the case. So if we want to broaden out the world and welcome more people to write in really good ways, without having to say, oh, look at that woman musician on stage, where we want to encourage good journalism, how do we encourage a younger generation? Do we have to give them a self-belief as well as the opportunity, Anne? And sorry,
sorry.
Yeah.
You asking me the question. Yeah, sorry, I was thinking we have to be super honest with people that would like to start a career, that there's no such word as a career, because we obviously don't do it for the money first. Some of them might do, but come on, it's all about passion, and it's all about defending a music and musical or music genres or music that are obviously having less and less representation in the classical medias. So if you don't do this with I don't know the word you use, enlightenment or passion, you're lost. And of course, there are as many women all around which know great loads of things about music and about history of music and about their social connection to art, to people, to citizens. So yes, if we are to give examples or to show the way to new women that would like to become journalists or to be writers in this economy, in this very slow, underrepresented economy, there's a lot of things to do and to develop. And I think the new medias and new forms of medias will help us do this. And I would like to come back to Andreas' comment about the lack of role models. To me, that was not the case, because first, I can decide whether I'm more eager to read a very good article or to listen to a very good program on the radio. But I had a lot of role models as women, and this is definitely women who just made me want to do something without being someone, just do something and bring my own stone to the edifice, because to the wall, because and it's coming from the radio. And with new medias, we have lots of possibilities to podcast, broadcast, share sounds, share the voice. Those role models that I had are coming from French radio program, of course, so maybe the name won't talk to everyone, but I grew up as a teenager just listening to short reviews of albums, interviews, and this was extremely powerful, and I think we still have a voice, and we have lots of things to develop in this direction.
So what was it about those role models? What stood out for you that gave you that buzz of excitement that you wanted to do something like this? Because there have been, you know, men and women speaking on the radio for years, and there is a certain sort of magic about the people who captivate us, but can you say a little bit more about what a role model meant to you? What was it?
Of course, it's the voice, and you are the best example. You have a radio voice. People can hear it, and people can refer. Or, of course, you need to have this first talent or gift, if it is a gift. But also, there's a style or a tone. I was okay. I have to give a name. Maybe it won't, but I'm thinking about this French journalist who is about my age. I think she's even younger than me. Eva Bester. She's part of. We had a great luck to have a pretty good public radio in France with lots of different programs, cultural programs that are not dead yet. And there's a tone. There's a way of tackling subjects that I'm thinking about Pascal Clark or those women that are that were the voice of a generation for music lovers. It's just that. It's just some guts. You could hear that they were passionate, and they were really trying to find a personal way to enter the music of the musicians they were interviewing, and that was enough to make any listener feel welcome in this world. And that's something voice can do, a radio voice can do. But when it comes to writing, you also have lots of women in the French press that open a big way for new generations of writers, just because they felt that they were close to the musicians. And if you can get this close by leading an interview or finding the right words to share your passion about music with a musician, with this frame or in this context of an interview, then you have a way to. It's just good examples to both.
Thank you. That passion and engagement that's so important on radio, that's so infectious in what we do. I wonder if that's your experience too, and Andreas. But how can we translate that onto our blogs, our online reviews, to those very short reviews, and onto social media? How can that passion and engagement become a role model, not just in radio, but across different platforms?
Ooh, that's a big question.
Yeah.
I think as Anne said before, I absolutely agree. Without passion, there were hardly any journalists, especially in jazz, because it's not economically driven part of the music scene. It's very much about passion and not very much about money. That's the same for musicians, for both musicians and journalists. So yes, I'm working for so-called old school media all my life, for printed media and now for the radio. I've never worked, there's some exceptions, but I've never worked for online media. But I guess it can mean a chance, of course, to make more women visible in the field of jazz journalism. It's about the editors-in-chief. It's about the editors-in-chiefs to be aware of having a team that consists equally of men and women. It's about having ideas having ideas yourself, and just starting a blog, just starting a jazz media channel yourself, whether you are a woman or a man. So, of course, the internet means many possibilities. I want to add one perception. Maybe I'm wrong, but it's what I think, or what my experience told me. Because when I started to listen to jazz, it was in the 80s, and there were only male voices in Austrian radio. So maybe France was ahead, or France is ahead. I don't know, because what you told us is different, or seems to be different, which is good, of course. In the 80s, it was similar also concerning musicians. There were just a few female musicians. Mostly there were singers, sometimes pianists, but no saxophonists, no drummers, no bassists. That changed a lot in my perception in Austria and all over Europe. It didn't change a lot concerning journalists, jazz journalists, also from my perception. I have the impression that there was a kind of snowball effect, or it's still taking place, because the more women there are in the music scene, the faster the process goes, because the women are aware of their role. They support other women, they form networks. It's my impression that the more women there are, the quicker we go to a state where maybe one day there are as many male than female musicians. But this impulse hasn't happened in the field of journalism yet, from my point of view. Maybe there should be a kind of project, a kind of grant, a kind of support, especially for female journalists. And this could be a starting point, because it means that female journalists and their awareness support other female journalists, which of course does not mean that it's just a part of female journalists. It should be an important project and an important thing for all journalists, especially also for men. But that's how I perceive it, and that's why I see a difference concerning the state of female jazz musicians and female jazz journalists right now.
Thank you. So we're looking a little bit to how we can improve things in the future for everybody, to make this a more equal and supported environment. I wonder, Sarah, what your experience is of what we might be missing if there are fewer women jazz journalists, if there are fewer women reviewing your concerts, reviewing your records. What are we missing out on? Are there aspects, are there angles that women journalists would perhaps be more likely to go for?
It's a very good question. And actually, I'm often asked as a musician if when I compose music, is there something like a female sound in it? And actually, I really don't like this, because I know so many male musicians who can play sensitive and write beautiful lyrical music, you know, or female saxophone players who play aggressive, fast and loud. So I don't like this. So, and maybe the question is for you more, because I'm not from this field. Is there something, do you think, is there something like a female writing? Because actually I don't think so. I would not make this difference. It's more about diversity and including the woman in a thing which is existing. And also concerning this role model, just that I make a little aspect in is, I think in jazz, especially Switzerland, which is a very small scene, we have, like, we know each other. We are friends. We are friends with the engineers, with the writers, with everybody. And friends ask their friends. And when men ask their friends, it's a very normal thing to ask the friends for things when you hang around anyway with them. So when we can make it more female, include in the whole theme, in all the aspects, more women, then I'm sure there are more women as well who will start to write.
I was just thinking, Sarah, that quite often you can read reviews, or you can be aware very much in live concerts that there can be very much a technical bias, particularly if it's quite a complicated setup, that the equipment being used can become quite a driving force for. I don't mean to make a sweeping generalization, but it can happen quite a lot from, quite a male-orientated audience. And that can sort of overlook many other aspects of your composition, or of the makeup, the progress of your band. Is that something you've experienced?
Sorry, it was acoustically. Can you just repeat the last?
Yeah.
I was off.
Yeah, is that something that you've experienced, that you can have something that's very geared towards the technical setup of a band, and what might be missing, and is that a women aspect? Are we missing out because there aren't enough women?
When I understand it right, no, I think not. Andreas, vielleicht musst du mir schnell helfen. I don't understand exactly the question.
The technical aspect about on the instrumental skills, Fiona?
Or is it, you mean the instrumental, the ability on the instrument? Or sorry?
No, perhaps more even more technical, particularly in this more electronic age. People are interested in the equipment used in the band and less about the music. It's almost like train spotting, that people are using a particular type of guitar, particular.
I don't think so that we can say that women are less interested in that. Really, I would say this is a cliche.
Well, that's a good thing to hear, because I think it was certainly the case some years ago, and if we're on this lovely sort of shifting slope, then we are going in the right direction. Mery, yes, I was going to come to you. Yes.
Can I say something? Because about what Sarah said, it's normally it's like that when some man is doing something, nobody noticed that behind this work is a man. And when the same thing is doing woman, almost always people mark or emphasize that this is a woman work. Why? Actually, we should ask why. Maybe somewhere deep inside us lies some hidden conviction that I don't know, women are weaker or more, I don't know, emotional. Of course, emotional. Because for centuries it was like that. Women were attributed skills other than men's, which were socially like less valued, I think. And maybe we have still this hidden conviction inside us. I don't know.
You were saying before, Mery, about sort of growing up, and maybe there's something within each of the countries that we work and live in about how you were perceived as a female growing up, as a woman, and the opportunities. Is that something that really resonates with you?
Yeah, I think I think we are living still in patriarchy society, I think, especially in Poland, but not only, I think. And it's connected with the ways in which children, especially girls, are raised. And as a result, I try to say it really, briefly and short. As a result, women are less confident. And I have an example. One of my boss on the radio, it was a woman. She said that she's fighting for more women on the air, not because they are not existing, but because they often hide or try to hide, or they don't believe in themselves. And this boss also said that she got a lot of CV, mostly from men. They were not afraid to call themselves specialists, even in areas that they did something, for example, only once in their lives. In the other hand, women decreased or minimalized their experience, their skills. Women often think that they are insufficient, that they know too little. It's really often way of thinking. And that's why they try to somehow hide or, yeah, I don't know. You know what I mean, I hope.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. What we're looking for, what we're hoping for, and not, of course, just in the area of jazz journalism, but right across the board, is a diverse, respectful society across all cultural groups, across ability, across disability. We want to be as inclusive as possible. So it's not just about a gender balance, but everything in creating a society where we can all function and respect each other. A couple of really interesting comments about the visual art, so photography, and the going back in history. Female photographers have played a huge part in jazz history without necessarily being recognized for it. And we haven't spoken about television because we've got a little bit of a radio bias here, I'm glad to say. But visually, how are we influenced? And you're working with radio, Andreas, but closely with colleagues too from visual arts. How can this move forward, and what sort of place does that feature in making jazz journalism across the board really great?
That's a question to me?
Yes.
All right. Yes, for me, it's maybe I want to relate to what Mery said, because I agree with what you said. That I think the echo of patriarchal society is still very strong nowadays, and it affects children when they grow up. So boys are often told, just try, just do this, just expose yourself to this, just tell me your opinion. And it's not as often told to girls, as far as I know, still nowadays. And I also experienced, probably as a result, this is very, very much simplified now, of course. I also perceived women to be more reluctant, to be more modest about their own skills. And that's probably one of the reasons why they, at least concerning my experience, not as often apply for jobs that are not so common. Let's say in the field of jazz journalism. That's maybe as a reason why I mostly get applications from men too. I would say 90%. So what can we men do? I think it's our part, and it's our obligation to see that, and not only to wait for women to show up, but really to, as I said before, to recruit them actively and to look for women who could be good journalists and don't know about it themselves, but just to give women a chance and to ask and to give them an opportunity. I was I'm doing my job now for 5 years. My agenda is to make the team younger and to make it more female, the jazz department on Radio Ö1. I told many men who applied for a job, no, sorry, not in the moment, and was really looking for women. And I would say it works. There are women. Sometimes they do apply. Sometimes I ask them, and it works slowly. And I think that's our job if we really want to have a gender balance one day. And of course, we want to have that. For me, it always was a big paradox, because jazz to me seemed a music of democracy, a music of equality, a music with attitude. And then I saw that the music business was just a mirror of patriarchal society. So it was a big contradiction for me. And so it's very, very necessary that we finally go there and get this gender balance, because that's what jazz is about for me.
Jazz as a very equal music. I wonder if there's anything to do with venues. Certainly a history of venues as a smoky, men's club. We look back reading jazz history books, but jazz in all its forms takes place in absolutely every sort of venue imaginable. How can the venues actually encourage a greater diversity of audience and a greater gender balance, which in turn will lead to a wider perception of female journalists and gender-wide equality across the board? Sarah, maybe as a performer, coming to you about venues and your perception of venues.
I mean, I run an own venue, the Jazzcampus, and of course that you have diversity, it really needs research. And that's what I loved what Andreas said, especially when you get applications. Most application you get, if it's for the club, if it's for the program I'm leading at the university, most applications are female applications. We really have to be active and write to female musicians. We have to do research, because often they don't apply, because sometimes they think they are kind of not invited. And maybe another example, this program where I'm leading, we have more than 100 applications every year. And from this, and maybe 4 women under these applications. And we asked women why. And they checked, for example, our website. And they said, yeah, look at the website. It's only men on the website. We feel not invited. Or sometimes in the language or the communication, and it's little things you can change. And we really actively started to reach out to people, that they send us contacts from female musicians, and we write to them and invite them to apply. And I think we have a success because they are very happy. And sometimes we have also to encourage, as Andreas said, we have to encourage young female musicians that they apply, that they take the chance.
Thank you. And the same applies to festivals in a sense. And just looking in some of the questions on the chat. And again, thank you very much for that. But when festivals, when album launches take place, to make sure that invitations are also sent not just to the people who've been coming for years, but to really to seek out that there's a good balance of male and female journalists, of people with more experience, with less experience, to really nurture a group of people, because I'm sure it's when you come together as a group of journalists, you make contacts, you share a chemistry, you share enthusiasms, and very often it's those enthusiasms that go forward and help to program other festivals. Those contacts, that networking, that's almost unspoken, but happens. Invitations, and I guess you get a fair share of invitations, but is it your perception that there's an equality with it within people invited to launches, to festivals?
I've asked some of the structures or institutions or festivals whether they were, what were their opinions on the subject, and a lot of them, women included, have answered, well, we are looking for them. Where are they? The women, the journalist women. So first there is, to sum up, it's just, let's work together. Of course, we have a responsibility to bring women to the highlight or to the stage as writer and enthusiast writer, but also let's work hand in hand with the programmers and the people who are directing and programming into the venues. It means a lot, and it's true that if you want more diversity in your crowd and in your article and in the representation and the professional crew that is invited, you need to open the venues. And it's moving so fast. I'm quoting someone, but jazz travels light. So it's the best form when you want to present jazz in a very open, whether it is an open space or a tiny little venue or a library or at home. You have so many possibilities with jazz. It can just be shown everywhere. So, and again, this is the best way to have young people in the room and to have women from all horizons coming as professionals, whether as writer or journalist or radio journalist or TV. Why not? Let's hope.
And again, looking at some of your questions coming in, thanks very much. But looking at building audiences, and that's been something that venues and festivals continue to talk about. How we build an audience, how we get people into the venues, but how we make it welcoming for women who might perceive sometimes jazz as and I've certainly been to concerts where you feel very much in the minority. We make women feel that this is absolutely for them, and sometimes it requires an organization, a festival, to as you were saying again, Sarah, to really seek out that equality in audience too. Mery, I wonder, do you have a perception of your listeners to your jazz programs, and whether you have a strong following of women listeners or the perceived male audience?
This is quite a difficult question. I have some information like emails or comment on Facebook, but mostly for men. So actually, I don't know. I think the most part of this audience it's male. Yeah, but I have a lot of colleagues, like women, who are really impressed what I'm doing, and they are just like fingers crossed for my work, because when we meet somewhere, they say that it's like amazing that I'm doing this and I'm actually alone there inside of this industry, not whole, but we are just few, as I said in the beginning.
Well, we've talked about jazz journalism in particular, but so many people write across perceived genres, and of course in festivals as well. You're going to have people who would be just as comfortable in a contemporary classical festival or in a world music festival, in jazz or experimental. So we're not going to go down the road of what is jazz at all. But we all know that there are so many ensembles who will work in so many different venues and in so many different spaces. So it's a question perhaps of encouraging writers and young writers to share that passion that we were talking about earlier and write about music, to just enjoy, as you were saying earlier, and enjoy the words, enjoy that playground of words, whether we're writing radio scripts, whether it's the words we use in interviews, or whether we create amazing sleeve notes. But this playground of words has got to be part of that, of our instrument that we work with. And we're sort of heading towards our final few minutes, and I think there's quite a lot of talk on the chat about encouraging younger generations, encouraging people, especially giving people the space that doesn't exist in traditional newspapers in the way that it did. There aren't jobs, very few actual jobs that if you want to write about music, you have to seek out areas where you can do something and make your voice heard and somehow put food on the table, keep a roof over your head and do that juggling act. So Anne, so we have to juggle, we have to play with words, we have to enjoy it and create a new generation of fantastic journalists, whoever they might be. Is that the way forward?
Yes, and we have to, by doing this, we have to be convincing, and we have to convince our governing forces, whether they are politicians or, well, people who make decisions, that people need space for arts on the web, on the press, on the radio, on the music. We want to be positive and to think that it's possible, but the reality is kind of harsh. A lot of magazines this year has been threatened, if not dead already. A lot of programs on the radio will come to an end in a few months. So it's we as people, listeners, journalists, but also passionate people about music, we have to change this, and we have to make people think that and believe that there is a place and there must be space to express this need and this crave for heart. So yeah, let's work.
And you expressed a love of words. What excites you about this playground of words?
The power it gives to people who are using them, and people, especially musicians. It's amazing what good words can provoke or create for a musician when all he or she is trying to convey with this music, when it touches someone whose role is to convey it into words, and when these words are found and shared, it's the best, it's just the greatest joy. And it's well, it might not give you a career, but as soon as you've been doing this for quite a long time, you get a craft, you get to know your craft.
And you get hooked on it as well. Once you realize that words are your best friend, then you can't leave them alone, really. Sarah, you shared with me a small piece of writing that you thought was an example of good writing. Do you want to read out just a couple of sentences of it and just say why it was good, why you thought this was good?
I don't have it here right now.
Oh, that's okay.
But I can just say what I already said, that it's about trumpet player, female trumpet player, and it's written only about her music, about her special sound and all these things, and not one single comment about how she looks like or about her gender. And I think this is just something which should be normal in 2020. And I hope we don't have to discuss this anymore. And actually, I think it's also now pretty good. Especially, at least in Switzerland and what I see around. Yeah.
That feels important, and that people are just writing about the music and focusing.
Yes, and I mean, just one thought I had for me as a musician. I mean, we often need text, we often need material or someone who writes about us. And of course, when I just take the first name who jumps into my mind, it's often a man. So it's also on everybody to think twice when you need somebody or whenever. So it was very good for me to be invited, because I never thought so much about this topic before, that it's also, I mean, the topic female musicians, of course, but the journalists. And so that was a very good thing for me to be here.
Well, I guess a final question to everyone, just a final comment, your last words, perhaps a bit of hope for the future. Andreas, final comment.
Final comment, something that came into my mind right now, because I was also reading some of the comments, the one by Ursula, saying that there is the professional perspectives for music journalism is not very good in general, especially for jazz. That's what I also perceive at the radio. The European Broadcasting Union jazz coordinators, they meet once a year, and nearly always everybody is talking about having less money, having less budget, a decrease of possibilities to record concerts, to do programs. And I guess it's similar with printed media. So it needs the jazz audience who really says, we want to read about music, we want to have programs on jazz, on music that you're not able to listen to on the radio. So it needs really people who are interested in journalism. And maybe this is also an agenda for an association like Europe Jazz Network, to really say we need journalism as a link between musicians and audience. So this is something very important for the future. And it's it's also a very important frame for the promotion of female jazz journalism, in my opinion.
Thank you. And quickly, Mery, last thoughts?
I was thinking about role models. As Anna said, it's not because we don't have these female role models. They are, but we makes it more visible, or visible actually. It is like, I thought about her story. History is like men's story. We teach or we learn about this men history, but during, I don't know how many, but some years ago, we start to talk about her story, and makes this her story more visible. More and more books are written about this woman history, and we talk a lot about this, and that's why this woman history, her story, is more visible. We try to, we make this woman be visible, women who are behind the men. They were not always in the kitchen. They did a lot of important things, but we don't see them.
Thank you.
Oh,
yes. Yeah. And Anne, a couple of last words very quickly.
Yes. I'm thinking quickly about this double perspective that I have, because I have had a long experience from France, which is very patriarchal in the way the medias and the journalism as are still functioning, or the medias are still functioning. And now I have this new perspective from meeting and working with people in Norway. And as everyone know, in Scandinavian countries, this gender balance is also has been more visible and is something more natural in the working environment here. And I guess it has to do with the fact that they got freed from a past, or the organizations are younger, the people are younger, and so there is hope. Of course, this year is especially this year is very difficult for every economy, and specifically the jazz economy. But if we just consider things as moving on, which is happening, the tools are here, and we don't need to be in a majority to change things. It's just a matter of responsibility. There might be just 2 women in a team of 25 men. If they have the power to make things move, things will change.
Absolutely. And just a final 30 seconds, Sarah, the power to change, the will to change.
Yeah, I just actually want to say that please go on writing because we really need that. And sometimes maybe you don't know that, but we jazz musicians, we are so happy when someone writes about you. It's really, really important. And I hope there will be much more journalists who write about jazz, much more younger people, more diversity, more women, more men. It can be more in any way. And I just want to say thank you that you do this. And it's important, really much important.
Thank you. So everyone who's watching, write amazing words, encourage people, give hope for the future. There is enormous talent out there, and we want to see it and nurture it. So thank you. We've come to the end of today. Thank you so very, very much for tuning in. Thanks so much to amazing panelists, really fantastic contributions. And the next in the series of 6 European Jazz Network webinars is on Tuesday, December the 1st. Such an important topic. How can we develop a new green rider to organize concerts and tours more sustainably? Think globally, act locally. It's so important for the environment that we turn our attention to how we can all do this. There's a great panel with Hugo Betheltoft from Norway, Chiara Badiali from the UK, Jakob Flara from Austria, Christos Karas from Greece, moderated by Wim Vabas. So please tune in to the next one. Everything's online afterwards as well. And thank you very much for joining us today. Great having all your comments. Take care, keep writing, keep making music.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.